folks. How we doing? Okay. This is the last thing we do, right? This is the Topic 8 test review. We'll test tomorrow. This is just the review video for the test. So we're talking about surface area here. Surface area is basically if you were to take this cylinder, for instance, and kind of like chop it down there and kind of like carve around the top and you laid it all flat, it's basically how much area it would cover, right? How much paint you would need to cover it or how much wrapping paper. That's the idea here. So we got this cylinder right here. It's going to give us the radius as 2. The height of it is 3. I'm just going to plug those in here so we kind of have an idea. And I take that 2 and I plug it into this R and that R, and I take this 3 and I plug it in for that H. So when I do that, it becomes 2 pi times 2 squared plus 2 pi times the radius times the height of 3. Okay. Now it looks a little bit complicated because it's long, but this is just addition and multiplication, and using that exponent, right? So I'm going to simplify it a little bit before I bust out the calculator, right? Oh, and I'm going to use 3.14 as my value for every instance of pi on this. Okay. 2 squared is 4, so it's 2 pi times 4 plus 2 pi times 2 times 3 is 6. Now I'll simplify a little again. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 6 is 12. Now I just treat this pi as a variable. It's a like term, so I can add them together to get to 20 pi. Okay. Now I take that 3.14, I take that value for pi and I convert it to 3.14. Now, if you are like, man, I don't want to download the Desmos Scientific Calculator because it takes up too much space on my phone, you can just access it on a browser, right? So you can just use this right here, right? So let me adjust it so it's a little bigger, it's a little easier to read. So now I'm just going to take that 20 times 3.14. 0.14. I'm going to get to, not 2. 20. There we go. 62.8. Okay. So up to one or round to one decimal place. So we're actually good right there. Now this is kilometers squared because it's surface area, not volume. Okay. So it's a 2-dimensional shape. That's rather than a 3-dimensional shape. That's not 162, it's 162, or regular 62. Okay, now moving on to volume. Formulas are right here for this, okay? This gives us the radius right here. So we have a radius of 8, we have a height of 11. Okay, we plug this 8 in for that R, we plug that 11 in for that H. Becomes pi times 8 squared times 11. Okay. Now that that pi is going to be 3.14. Now 8 squared is the same thing as 8 times 8 times 11. Okay. So now I'm just going to pop this entire thing in my calculator. Okay. So I take that 3.14 times 8 times 8 times 11, and I get to 2,210.6 feet cubed because it's volume once we do that, right? Now if you're looking at this and you're like, okay, all right, let me actually adjust that so we can see the whole thing right there. You can also put this in as 3.14 times 8 squared times 11 gets you the same thing. You can also put it in as 3.14 times 64 times 11 because 8 squared is 64. 8 times 8 is 64. So 3 different ways to put this in, okay? That will all give you the same answer, okay? All right, now moving on. This gives us the diameter, not the radius. So I need to take that and cut it in half to get to what we need, right? So if the dotted line goes all the way across, that's the diameter. You need to cut it in half to get to the radius. So this becomes pi times 9 squared times 11. So 3.14 times 9 squared is 81 times 11. Okay, so you'll notice kind of I'm showing the multiple different ways that you can represent this kind of stuff, right? So let me actually go 3.14. Let me do the last problem so I have it in there. Squared, come on, times 11. Okay, so I've got the last problem in there already. What I'm gonna do is edit it, right? So the only thing I need to do is change that 8 squared to a 9 squared. Okay. Focus that. So just go right there, get rid of that 8, put the 9 in, and I get right there, right? So it's already in there. I don't really need to do much to get the correct answer for that. So feet cubed right there. Okay. So just be aware that that's one of the benefits of the Desmos calculator. It saves it all in there and it writes it all out. Okay. So it doesn't do it one piece at a time like the iPhone calculator does. Okay. Now, this is the difference here in this problem. We got that 1/3, right? Now, that 1/3, right? Fractions are always just division problems. Okay. So just be aware that we'll be dividing. So that radius is 8, height is 16. So it becomes 1/3 pi times 8 squared times 16. So 1/3 times 3.14 times 64 times 16. Okay. So 1 divided by 3. Okay. That's 0.3333 repeating. Now I can either shift the cursor out from underneath, or I can just touch it right there. Okay. Now I'm going to multiply by that 3.14. And then I'm going to multiply by 64. And then I'm going to multiply by 16. Let me actually adjust that so you can see it. Okay, so I got everything on there, and that gets us to 1,071.8 inches cubed. Okay. Now, another way to approach this, right? This 1/3 right here, you can approach it as 1 times 3.14 times 64 times 16 divided by 3. So you can do all that. You don't even technically even need to multiply by that 1. You could just say 3.14 times 64 times 16 divided by 3. That is useful if you only have access to the iPhone calculator, right? 3.14 times 64 times 16. Oops, let me start over. 3.14 times 64 times 16 divided by 3. Okay, it's the same exact answer. Okay, just a different way to approach it using a different calculator. Okay, all right. So this gives us the diameter. So we want to adjust the radius to be 2 with a height of 6. This is 1/3 pi times 2 squared times 6. I'm just gonna put the whole thing in here, right? Again, this is like super simple. It doesn't require that much effort. You just use the calculator. 3.14 times 2 squared is 4 times 6. I mean, again, you could even just straight up do 2 squared times 6. It's going to give you the same thing, right? So that's 25.1 miles. That's a very large cube. Miles cubed for the volume. Again, volume is just the area, not the area, sorry, the space inside a three-dimensional shape, okay, inside these cones. Yeah. Moving on to spheres. Different equation, but very similar. Okay. Rather than dividing by 1/3 or doing 1/3, we do 4/3. This becomes 3 cubed, right? 3 cubed is 3 times 3 times 3. Okay. Not 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. So 4 divided by 3. Oh, actually, let me. Times 3.14 times 27. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. Okay. So I'm just popping the entire thing into the Desmos scientific calculator times 27, and we get to 113. Now, if we're doing one decimal place, we're just going to leave it there and not put that 0.0. Okay. All right, moving on. Very similar. The real only difference is that our radius is half the diameter, right? So it becomes 9. So 4 cubed pi times 9 cubed. Now you might be like, well, 9 cubed, I don't know how to deal with that. 3 ways to deal with it. For this one, you'd say 9 cubed, you do the little AB right there. Let me actually adjust it so it's easier to see. Okay, you do the little AB right there. Oh, shoot. AB puts it into 3 right there. Another way to do it, 9 times 9 times 9. 2 ways to do it, I suppose. Okay, so that gets you to 4/3 pi my bad, times 3.14 times 729. Okay. All right, let's drop it over here so we can see it. So I'm actually just going to use this one right here. Let me clear this one out. And then I'll say 4 divided by 3 times 3.14 times 9 cubed. Okay. Gets us to 3,052.1 kilometers cubed. That's that. Okay.